Welcome to Tradition and Truth. My name is Walker, and today I have a question about Catholicism. This channel, we discuss all things philosophy and theology, and we deep dive into each subject individually to try to educate ourselves and just grow better in our faith. Welcome to the Appalachian Mountains, a place that is enriched in coal, culture, and faith. Those three things are related, and my question is, why is Catholicism considered a missionary work in the Appalachian Mountains? To understand this question, we may need to dive in a little bit deeper and understand that this is coal country. Now, when I say Appalachian Mountains, I am not saying Pennsylvania, even though that is the Appalachian Mountains. Understand that Catholicism, as you go north, is much more apparent in society. However, as you go further south, for example, I am in the southwestern part of Virginia, near Kentucky, and because of that, Catholicism is very limited. However, faith here is a big thing. Religion is very big here, and it's so enthused in our society, or infused in our society, that it's in politics, leadership, everywhere. And if you don't have faith, you're ostracized from the community. But what kind of faith do we have? Most of the faith here is Protestant faith. We have different sects of Christianity. So we do have Catholicism. Less than 1% of our population is Catholic. The rest of them are going to fall under mostly Baptist. The common Baptist are Southern Free Will and non-denominational. And then under that you have Pentecostal, and then it goes into like some of the other ones. Methodist is pretty big around here, but not as big as some would think. But Methodist is probably within the top like 5, and Catholicism's down there with Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons or Latter-day Saints. The reason I asked this question of why is Catholicism such a limited thing here, this area was founded by migrants. I'm speaking of Italians, Polish, and European migrants that came here in the early 1900s to fill our coal mines. Coal mines existed in the early 1900s as company mines, and what that means is you did not get paid in currency the same way you would now for a job. You got paid in a company script, which was only usable at the company store that owned the same coal mines. And you had to rent your equipment, so you were always in debt to the store and you couldn't leave. You were unable to leave the coal mines, essentially. The coal mining industry has continued to stay a thing over the last century. Though the job market tends to fluctuate, the thing is coal miners are paid pretty good nowadays. I mean, that's a career you can make almost 6 figures in if you do it right. And that's for no education. It's just backbreaking labor. So I'm the first generation in my family for a very long time not to work in the coal mines. I wanted to pursue something different. But most of the coal miners in the early 1900s were migrants, to include Italians. Italy seems to be a very Catholic prominent culture. So much like Spain and even South America, because it was influenced heavily by Spain. So why is our culture here in the Appalachian Mountains not Catholic influenced when most of our migrants in the early 1900s were Catholic? To answer these questions, we have to look at assimilation, or the blending in of culture. So we have to understand who founded the United States. So South America, Mexico, Brazil, etc., would have been founded by, the Spain cultures, right? Because of that, they're heavily Catholic even to this day. The United States, however, was founded by English settlers, so it would have been the Church of England, which was a schism from the Catholic Church because a king wanted to be at war. And just being blunt, that's what it was. Our culture was not founded by Catholics to begin with. And several hundred years after our country was founded, you have migrants from these European countries that are heavily Catholic because the church remains strong in these cultures. Because of that, these individuals were without parishes. Now, we still have some of these standalone parishes today, and I have one in my county. And oftentimes there is only one parish per county. And I will tell you, in my county, there's only one parish, and less than 12 people attend that parish out of the entire county. And you have one priest that will cover like 3 different counties. With there being a lack of vocations of priest, brothers, sisters, etc., you're not going to have mass offered daily. Even today, I have to travel to other counties to get to mass daily if I want to go. And I have to find their schedule, and it's tough. It's not easy. It's not as easy as just driving downtown to the cathedral or the basilica and just walking in and going to mass when their mass times are. So these Catholic migrants would have eventually assimilated into Protestant culture. They would have started to attend Baptist church or Methodist church or etc. And honestly, if you're used to the Catholic idea or Catholic idea of the transfiguration within the Eucharist, you would look at closer related churches. For example, you would look at, instead, because Orthodox is not around here either, you would look at Lutheran or Methodist, who still actively practice the communion. They just don't practice the idea of the Eucharist the same way Catholics do. So they assimilated into culture, and then their offspring, their children and grandchildren, would have also been into those churches because they were raised in those churches. And here we are 3 or 4 generations away from these migrant ages, and we have more Catholicism here in the area, more access to it, but culture tells you to be Protestant because everyone else already is. And it's so bad that even so, like growing up as a Baptist and leaving the Baptist faith for a while before finding Catholicism's not even taught. They actively avoid the idea of teaching about church fathers or the original church concept or anything along those lines. And I think some of it's fear because I think they legitimately don't want you to know about it. But also there's just a level of ignorance to it, to where people just don't know. And it's not like they choose to not know, they just don't know. They don't know about Catholicism. They don't know it was the original church. They don't know any of these things. So when you come to them and tell them that, it's a shock. It really is. And sometimes it's met with hostility, and other times it's met with genuine interest. And then you have to look at outmigration. Outmigration means that when the job market or the economy kind of dries up or spindles out, you're going to move. And that happens a lot here. Our coal country is basically for example, my county was one of the biggest producers of coal at one point in time in the state or in the United States. I can't remember, but it was massive. And for that reason, eventually the coal mines shut down. They ran out. And it's very political. You know, one president puts in regulations, the other one lifts them, and then so you have jobs, and then you don't have jobs, and you get laid off, and then you're constantly like, well, do I want to work in the oil fields? Do I want to work in coal? And you have to provide for your family, especially then when only the man worked. Typically, women did not work in the household. So you had to look at outward migration. You had to say, hey, I can't live here any longer. There's not enough money to support my family. We need to uproot. And if you're already used to migration anyways, because you just moved from Italy, it's pretty easy to move a couple states away, because in Europe, you can drive from England to France within an hour or 2, right? So most of these Italian families that would have been heavily Catholic and refused to assimilate into Protestant culture would have outwardly migrated to larger cities such as Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and those cities in that area. They would have moved north to the larger cities where they had factory work and more stable income. And we can look at that today in today's culture and understand that Catholicism is extremely heavy in those cities. And that's because this area was already founded and established by Protestant culture. People who owned lands, the people who owned the coal mines, etc., were Protestant people. They weren't Catholic. And so it's hard for a migrant to come here, not own land, try to find his own faith, and then not assimilate into the current culture here and have to move. You don't own anything here, so of course you're not going to stay here if you don't have to, if there's no money here. Just simple as that. So you have to outwardly migrate. Then you have some natural advantages that Protestant movements would have, to include they don't need diocesan magisterium level influence. You don't have to have a bishop that's centralized for this diocese to establish a parish here. In Catholicism, you have to have the missionary work that says, hey, this area needs it. Then you have to have the funding to even build the parish. You have to have the number of people that's willing to come because you're doing your missionary work. And then you have to plead to the bishop of the diocese and say, hey, this falls in your area. You are the bishop of this area. Can we please build a parish here? And when we do, are you willing to come in and bless our altar, bless the parish, and do all these things? Is that under your order? In most Pentecostal religions, especially Baptist, you just build you can use this awning right here as a church. They don't celebrate the Eucharist. They don't actively celebrate any of the sacraments. They do, but not the same way Catholics do, right? They don't even teach sacraments in the Baptist, Pentecostal, or whatever type faiths, these Protestant faiths. Because to Protestants, the idea of going to church is going to listen to someone preach. It's not about a ritual or a sacred order that happens within the Eucharist or whatever. It's literally just going out here and listen to some guy jab his jaw off. Kind of what I'm doing right now, except for just talking about Scripture, sola scriptura and all that stuff. So it's super easy to establish churches, as they call it, within the Protestant faith. Very difficult within Catholicism, especially in this time period where you just don't have Catholics anyways. Catholicism scares people. Why? So folk culture around here is already very supernatural anyways. You have these people there was Irish immigrants, and Irish are typically known to be Catholic. However, you have a lot of very deep-rooted folk culture within the Appalachians where they believe in some crazy supernatural stuff. And a lot of these creatures like the woodbooger, the Sasquatch, and the chupacabra and all that crap, that's the kind of stuff these people believe in. And they're also very big into supernatural culture. One of the things you'll see around here a lot is if a cat crosses the road when you're driving down the road, a lot of old timers will put crosses in their window, or X's, not like the Christian cross, but an X, because they don't want bad luck. That's the kind of culture that's around here. And so when you bring in this foreign idea of religion that they don't know, even today, and this is something that happens even today, if you bring in the idea of Catholicism, they don't know what it is. You try to tell them about the Eucharist, that sounds strange and weird to them. You talk about Latin rites, and I know Vatican II kind of changed that a little bit to make it more friendly because Latin scared some people away. But when you look at Latin rites, the Eucharist, the sacraments, and all the things it takes to be Catholic, the robes, the ritualistic worship that we do, it is terrifying to some of these people who are very supernatural, and they are, and I'm going to say this as politely as possible without meaning insult to it, but they're ignorant, because the idea of ignorance is just not knowing, and that's exactly what it is. They're ignorant to the concept, so they are fearful, and what you're fearful for, you reject. You also have to look at cultural migration and understand that if my family came here from Italy, chances are the family down the road that also came here from Italy are related to me in some way. And you don't want to marry within your own family. That's bad. As much as people think the Appalachian culture is like that, it's really not. And it happens, but it happens everywhere. And the idea is that, no, you don't want to marry your cousin. That's really a bad thing. You should marry outward. And because of that, Protestants and Catholics often marry each other. Now, something I see in the Catholic Church a lot is Catholics marry Protestants, and Protestants become Catholic. But it does happen the other way around, especially when you have one family that's Catholic and everybody else in the entire region is Protestant. And to have any kind of political sway or whatever it may be, you need to be Protestant to have the same ideologies, because you will have fundamental doctrine disagreements if you're Catholic and you're trying to talk to Protestants, because again, there's a lot of ignorance within the schisms that have happened over the course of half of a millennia. The good news is Catholicism is on the rise, especially here in the Appalachians, in the smaller regions, and that's one of my goals, is to educate. I don't go out here and evangelize on the street and try to street preach to people, but what I do is I try to educate. And I do that because I myself was uneducated on what Catholicism and Christianity actually was. I had this concept, and I find that in our culture you have a lot of individuals who claim the title of Christian, but they don't know anything about Christianity at all. They know what Jesus Christ was, but they completely get wrong who he was. And or they know who he was, but they get wrong what he was. Either way, the idea is, I'm here to educate. I don't want to be preachy and spiritual about it. Obviously, I can, but the idea is to educate and show them where they're misinformed, or they just simply misunderstand. And through that, I hope for conversion into the fullness of the truth, which is the Catholic Church. So in short, Catholicism is small in my area because of cultural issues that still exist to this day, and because people are just ignorant. And that's okay. We're all ignorant to a lot of things. And that's why you should learn something new every day. Have a focus to learn something better. Either way, my name's Walker. Thank you for watching Tradition and Truth, where we talk about all things philosophy and theology. Hope you all have a great day. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Let me know if you want to see anything in the future. If you have agreements or disagreements, I'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching.